Hi, everyone. This is Amy, off camera this time, happily, from App Engine Developer Relations. And today we're chatting with all of the App Engine PMs. So this is a really great opportunity for you guys to ask them the difficult questions, the questions we all love, like when will such and such be available in App Engine? and all sorts of other tricky and interesting questions. Anything you can think of, they love it. And so we've opened up this Hangout so that some of you can join, up to 9 additional people, I believe. And so we hope that some of you will, and you can ask your questions in person. But what we're going to do right now is have the PMs introduce themselves briefly, and then just take some questions from the moderator. And if you go to the posted event for this on developers.google.com, you'll see a link to the moderator where you can add more questions. All right, so I'll hand the microphone over to the PMs.
So hi everyone, my name's Andrew. I'm a product manager on App Engine from Sydney, Australia, and my particular specialty is the Python runtime. So any Python questions, feel free to hit me up.
Hi, I'm Greg D'Alessander. I'm the lead product manager on Google App Engine. Today I'm in Sydney, Australia, but in general out of San Francisco. I pretty much do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, so I'll answer the questions and no one else wants to.
How you doing? My name is Chris. I'm also one of the product managers for App Engine, and as well with Greg, based out of the Bay Area, San Francisco office to be specific, but here hanging out down under with all the folks in Sydney, which has been fantastic. Jack of many trades, but focusing on data store and other API-related things. So I'll take any questions that you have on that. All right, turn it over.
Hi, I'm Christina. I also work out of the San Francisco office, and I'm a product manager on App Engine. The things that I work on that you probably care about are the Search API, Mapreduce sockets, a couple other things like mail, and assorted other things. I think that's all I work on.
Should we start with some questions from the moderator?
Yes. So let's.
So, Chris,
Greg,
what's the easiest way to move data between data store and Cloud SQL?
Oh, so actually we have been joining us.
Oh.
Welcome. And as a prize for being the first person to join the Hangout, before we go to the moderator questions, would you like to ask any questions live or introduce yourself? And don't feel like you have to. If you don't want to.
not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, we don't want to put you on the spot.
And can you hear Amy?
Unfortunately, you're a little muted.
Oh, Gene.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Greg, you were saying.
So I was wondering, what's the easiest way to move data between data store and Cloud SQL?
Well, so I think there's a couple ways of doing this. One way might be to actually do a backup from the data store and then read through the data and do an import into Cloud SQL, and you can do that. The format for doing the backup is not proprietary, but the documentation is still a bit loose on that, so we'll be tidying that up in the months to come. But the other way to do it, where we've seen a lot of people have success, is to do just a simple Mapreduce over your data store entities, the ones that you want to actually back up and import into Cloud SQL, and then do the mapping, the reducing, and then pull it back into Cloud SQL, and then you can do your ad hoc queries and whatnot from there. So we really think that that's probably the easiest way right now.
Sounds great. Thanks.
There are samples for that if you've looked at any of the Mapreduce into Bigquery samples, those would be a good starting point for anything that you want to do to Mapreduce into Cloud SQL.
All right. Until Gene rejoins us, let me. Oh, Gene, I feel like we didn't even say anything to drive you away so quickly.
Somebody email him.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not sure if they can hear me, but just invite. There's a few people watching. invite them to please join live.
Anyone who's watching, please join us live. Otherwise, we're just going to keep on babbling, and you don't want that. I will continue with questions with the moderator until we see your smiling faces pop up. So there's a question here that I will ask, I guess, myself. Let's say there are 1 billion elements of a model. Each of these 1 billion elements share an index that is sorted by a float. If these 1 billion elements each change the value of float every approximately 10 seconds diversely, can App Engine handle it? So it does feel like I'm back interviewing for Google again in reading that question to myself. Well, I didn't read it to myself at that point. But we're actually going to hold this question and talk to Alfred, who is our tech lead for Data Store. You probably have seen him posting on Stack Overflow in the groups and that sort of thing. He'll have a better answer for it. Essentially, it seems like it's a question around what's the load that Data Store can handle. As I'm interpreting it, it's what's the load Data Store can handle in terms of frequency of changes to individual elements. So I think Alfred can do a better job of answering that than any of us could.
So if you could add that we could follow up on
and we'll follow up on the moderator with that little link where we post a response.
Are users able to update the moderator questions as well?
Just in case you can't hear Amy anymore, the disembodied voice that we keep on asking questions of, who you probably there's answers coming from off screen is Amy. All right, so let me ask the next question, which is, Andrew, can you describe some of the security models that can be used with Google App Engine?
So this is a good question, actually, because I think this is something... Oh, hope we can all hear me. So this is a question, actually, I think it's the first question that people ask when they start using Google App Engine. It's how do all of these... I'm used to working with all of these different components in, say, a LAMP stack or with a typical application server. So how does it work inside App Engine? Of course, the strict answer to a question like this is it depends. It depends what you're doing. But the way a lot of App Engine applications tend to look, especially when you're starting out, is you'll have some HTTP requests coming in from the outside world, and then you'll have some scripts that will capture those requests and handle them, and then they will write some data to a back-end data store. And in App Engine, the way that's handled is you've got I guess two things to think about. The first is how do we control what HTTP requests are coming in? Now, because now, Christina, we have sockets coming, so this will change slightly. But for the most part, most of the inbound traffic, most of the inbound requests from the outside world all come in through HTTP. So if you can control the HTTP requests that are coming in, then to a certain extent you can control how your application is exposed to the outside world. So how do you handle security on that? And there's a few different ways you can do that. The first is, of course, you can write security yourself. You can have your own login systems and authentication systems. But we also provide some additional support if you want to use either OpenID or Google accounts to help manage your security. We actually make that super easy to do. You can we have a file in every App Engine project called an app.yaml file that can define where, or in every Python and Go project, I should say, that will define explicitly how HTTP requests get mapped to a request handler, and in that definition, you can specify you can specify if that should be restricted to users who have logged in via a Google account. And then if you want, you can restrict it even further, and I believe you can restrict it to the level of saying only users who have a Google account and who are also an administrator of the App Engine project. And that's really useful when you have, let's say you have a few administration components to your application that really you don't want, you want to be able to be accessible to a web browser, but you don't want to be accessible to any Joe who's coming to your website. So that's one way, and then of course there's the data store itself and this important application data that you've protected. So your application code can get to that, of course. Your users can't get to it unless they're able to indirectly via your request handlers. And then the only other level of security really is who can actually access your application account, who can log in and view the the dashboards and the consoles that you have access to. And that, again, is something where you can explicitly whitelist end users. So you define precisely which users you want to have access to your App Engine console, all of the monitoring information that comes along with your project, and any data that you're storing. So that's a somewhat long-winded answer, but hopefully it touches on some of it.
Well, to add to that a little bit, so Andrew, you touched on some of the services that we have, like data store and things like that, and those are all multi-tenant services that are sliced and diced based on namespaces that are completely secure. Thus, one application can't access another application's data, which is great, right? Until you have a larger application that is, and sometimes some ways made up of logical components, right? A front end to handle mobile requests, a front end to handle web requests, a back end to do a billing pipeline. And so, since we have a bunch of product managers here, we can go ahead and talk about one of the things that we're doing now, and we just kicked off a kind of small trusted tester program. But one of the things we're looking to do as we go forward in the upcoming months is to give developers that have these large-scale applications a way to segment their applications such that you can have multiple components. We call them App Engine servers. So real quickly, the hierarchy now would be, or going forward, App ID, server, then version, and then the instances of your application. And what you can do there then is you can start to break out your mobile front end, your web front end, and your billing pipeline into multiple servers that can then choose to access the same data store, memcache, or you might decide that you want to close off one of them so that your billing pipeline can't necessarily be accessed by your web front end, because that just doesn't necessarily make sense. And so we're taking that multi-tenant approach and that secure model that we have today and looking to make it a bit more flexible, but still making sure that other applications, right, not servers within an application, still cannot access the data store data. So that's kind of that's a little forward thinking of where we're going.
Makes sense. I think we have some people live. Do you guys have some questions?
And if you want, you can type them into the chat window.
If you want, you can type them into the chat window. I see someone is typing. Amy, could you read what the question is in there to us?
This is the person who posted the question about the 1 billion elements.
Okay.
Yeah. So he just missed of course the answer to it.
Oh, so he wants the answer. Okay.
So the short answer is, it sounds like what you're asking about is specifically around data store and how many operations on the element, or what's the rate of operation for elements that can be handled. And I think Alfred really who's our tech lead of data store, is the best person to answer that question. So we're going to get him to put an answer together, and we'll post it back to the moderator once he gets that answer together.
Hold on just a second. Could you ask them both to check if they were watching the broadcast that's muted? I'm hearing a bit of an echo.
So Amy wanted me to check with you guys that if you're watching the broadcast, I think the echo just went away. Just to make sure you might be muted, so there's no feedback.
Yeah, mute the broadcast.
Mute the broadcast, yeah.
So on the topic of the follow-up there that I wanted to mention, and now that we've got the person asked the question, definitely a good idea to get Alfred to take a look at this. I think he's had some great thoughts on it. But it is interesting to note that back at I.O. we mentioned that one of the stats that we put up there was that we're handling roughly 2 trillion operations per month in the data store. And Max and I had some fun and went digging around, and we're up to actually 2.5 trillion now. So I think this talks about I think you and I did some math on the QPS, but to give you an aggregate view of what we're doing, I mean, 2.5 trillion is no small number. So, yeah, we'll get an answer back to you, but I just wanted to throw out that data point as well.
Sounds great. It looks like, okay, so unless there is our additional questions from the people on the Hangout, why don't I go to the next one at the top of the list, which is, when EU hosting for App Engine apps initially becomes available to non-Premier customers, will all of the same services be available locally, or are there some services that will still need to round-trip EU, US, EU? Chris.
So we are actively rolling out the support to non-Premier. We look for that to hopefully land in the next few months. And in terms of the services that are available, it's, to the best of my knowledge, it's all the services that are available today for US-based applications will be available in the EU as well, and will not round trip. The whole idea there is that you typically look to host in other regions for two reasons and potentially more, but the first that spring to mind are latency, and then for some they want to control where their data is stored, which means that it's not just storage at rest, it's just where it's funneling through the system. So it's very important that it all stays housed within that data center. And so yes, all those services will be available, and there will be no round tripping back to the US. So the next question, and Amy will interrupt me if somebody in the Hangout has a question.
Someone's working on a question in the chat.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. I asked if they wanted to introduce themselves. Yes. So, I'm Khan. I have an app creator.
Is this Con Sorrel?
It is.
Ah. Hi. I believe we've emailed in the discussion groups before and that sort of thing. I recognize your name.
So he says that he has an app creator app for a Facebook platform that's on App Engine, currently working on something new. And we just got someone else join, Olivier.
Fantastic.
Say hello to him.
Hi, Olivier.
Hello. So is there a question, or was
He's just introducing himself.
Oh, okay, great, fantastic.
Yes.
So I'll continue on this next question, and we'll keep an eye on the live Hangout. So with the growing popularity of Go, are we likely to see a greater allocation of resources to the runtime? As a Go enthusiast, what can I do to help speed up this process? Christina, do you want to? I can answer, but you haven't answered the question.
Sure.
So the Go runtime is definitely gaining some momentum. We don't have any specific numbers to share with you today, but we've seen some pretty good adoption of it. We are actively adding features. The Go team is actively adding a bunch of features that we're working on. There are a couple that aren't quite ready for us to announce yet, but that should be coming soon. And I think, if you want to actually contribute to Go, there's an active community externally as well as internally working on Go, and so I think there are a number of things that are actually external that if you want to contribute, you can. But that's another thing we'll have to go check around with the Eng team and come up with any specific suggestions, and we'll put them back on the moderator.
The good news is while we're in Sydney, we sit right next to the Go team, who's all sitting down here, and so we'll just go downstairs and ask them after this.
And Go is getting super popular inside Google as well, which is always an encouraging sign.
Agreed. Any new questions on the live feed?
No.
All right. Mapreduce jobs that take more than 1 hour fail to save to Google Cloud Storage with a file not open error. I'm using the blob store as a workaround, but is there any way to make it work with cloud storage? Christina.
So the question is around sort of MapReduce stability and things taking longer and having problems. So we are actively working on improving the stability of what's sort of the Files API, which is how we actually talk to Google Cloud Storage, and making that a bit more robust to sort of intermittent failures. I think right now we're at a state where if something sort of goes wrong there, it's really tough to figure out sort of what went wrong. And one of the nice things about an experimental API is that we actually are still working on it and improving it. So definitely look for some improvements to that coming soon, hopefully in either our next release or the release after that. And you should see both some transparent stability improvements as well as some just usability improvements to the API that will make those things last a little bit better. If you could actually post your app ID either to me or to someone else, we can actually take a look at your specific case and see if there is something we can do in the meantime. Everyone can find my email on the groups, or you can feel free to post on the moderator or to send it to Amy, and we can have a look.
So I think it's actually worth noting too how seriously we take this, because it's whether you know or not, under the hood there's a lot of other things that actually use our MapReduce framework and APIs, as well as the file system APIs or the Files API. So case in point, and something that's near and dear to my heart is so we have a backup and restore mechanism that's in experimental as well right now. And I really would like to push that across the finish line to GA, But one of the things that's happening is that, since it does rely on the Files API, then we're looking for stability there, and it kind of works its way up the chain. There's certain dependencies, and so when you notice these dependencies, it becomes very clear what you need to do. And so, like Christina said, so we're looking actively for, hopefully in 1.7.4 or 1.7.5, that we have an update to the Files API, and then from there, we can start to see how things shake out, and Backup and Restore goes to GA soon afterwards. And so it's kind of like dominoes falling in a good way, actually.
All right.
So we have a question from the chat that actually you addressed earlier, but maybe we can address again. Someone online now. What is the easiest way to move data between data store and Cloud SQL?
So from the online hangout, there's a question of a reiteration of the question of the easiest way to move data between data store and Cloud SQL. Chris.
Yeah. So to kind of reiterate, I had mentioned backup and restore, backing it up and then reading the file and importing into Cloud SQL, but also as one way. But really mention that the way we're seeing success with users, the way that we're seeing people be successful is what I should say, is to actually do a Mapreduce over your data store, pick the entities that you want, do a map, do a reduce, and then import into Cloud SQL, and that seems to be working quite well.
All right, thanks, Chris. So I'm going to keep on waiting for Amy to share any new questions that come up.
Khan has asked a question on Moderator about Premier account.
Ah, yes. Okay. Well, let's get to I see the question, and let me do that one immediately. Is the Premier account creation any simpler? Last time I checked, it was a must-be to be a company. What kind of documents are required to create a Premier account? Can any company in any country create a Premier account? Why don't I take that one? So the Premier account creation is it's gotten faster because we have more people working on it. The main reason that somebody must be a company is we actually have to do a credit check because of essentially the way Premier accounts work and the way we open up the services. We essentially Google does a credit check on the company first in order to ensure that we can open up a Premier account to you, which is why incorporation is necessary. In terms of the documentation required, that's actually that's a great question for our sales team. We'll ping those guys to give details around the specific documentation that they'll require. And in terms of can any company in any country create a Premier account, there's a large number of countries you can. There are some exceptions to that, and I think we can also get that from the sales team to post what are the list of countries. Some of the countries we can do essentially local contracts with you in that country, and then there's other countries where we would essentially you would sign a U.S. contract. Or a contract for another country. So we don't have contracts for every single country, but we do have, but for most countries, we'll sign a contract, either a U.S. or the countries that we do offer for you. So, but again, this is another one where we'll go to the sales team, and we'll get from them the list of documents that you'll need. And as I said, the good news is we have more people working on this now. We have a larger team working on the Premier accounts, which is good news. We're growing, but it also means you get much faster responses in terms of creating Premier accounts. I know early on we were flooded with requests, and so it took a little while to get those requests processed.
Kind of worth noting there too is it's not only that we are ramping up the team that actually onboards premium customers, which Greg's definitely right. We're actually ramping up quickly the team that handles the support requests as well. So I've personally seen that team grow from a handful to many folks that we have going right now, and it's working out pretty well. So I like the progress we're making all the way from the onboarding to the how we handle support requests once you're there.
Are there new questions?
So, Hans says useful information, and he said, as you mentioned, it would be great if we can find this online. So
And
yeah, we can update the moderator.
We'll update the moderator, and I'll also talk to the sales team about updating our website to include this information, so you don't have to track us down in Hangouts and moderators. I think that would probably be the best thing to do. So I'll talk to the sales team about getting that. But yeah, and we'll update the moderator. But Con, feel free to reach out to me as well about it. I think you probably have my email address. All right, so let's see. Another new question. Wait, hold on. There was I'm just making sure I'm getting all these questions. Oh, how can we apply for the Trusted Tester program? It was just voted up as I'm reading it. How can we apply for the Trusted Tester program for segmenting an application into multiple deployments? This would be extremely useful to the application we're building. This is the one you had just mentioned.
Yeah, so this is the App Engine servers feature that I just mentioned. So it's a very limited program right now because we really just got it out the door. So look for an update to the groups that I'll send around probably within the next month, I believe. Where we'll reach out and grow it from the small group to a larger group. You know, that's the kind of the life cycle we have. It's just start out small, get bigger, and then we'll eventually get to experimental, and then finally to GA. So look for an update from me.
If you're interested right now, though, I think
true.
Yeah, just let us know your contact information, and Chris will track that, and we'll add you to the list once that goes out.
Can they?
They're welcome to email me. They can find that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a very good point. If you just email Amy, we can go ahead and I'll reach out to you and we can get things started.
Any other questions? No. All right. Then the last question. I think the last new question I'm seeing in the moderator right now. Wait. Here's another new one. Well, okay. So let's do them in order. Is there any way to make a Python New Relic agent work on App Engine?
So there's a long answer and a short answer to that one. The short answer, unfortunately, is no at this stage. Although it's not possible to install a Python New Relic agent in your application today, as I understand it. That being said, it would be interesting to see if it could be possible, given that we now have outbound socket support. So it's possibly something that you could look at. It's possibly something that you could look into adapting the New Relic agent to doing.
You might mention that that's in Trusted Tester.
Yeah, that's in.
Mentioned earlier.
Yeah. So if anyone's on the Trusted Tester program and is a New Relic fan, that would be a really interesting project to look at. That being said, I don't believe it's possible out of the box at this point.
All right. And talking to an SSL VIP of an App Engine app from the UK, the lower bound on when the client hello of the initial SSL handshake arrives is much greater than an EU-US-EU round trip. It almost looks like there might be 2 round trips behind the scenes. Is that expected? So if I understand the question, what you're basically saying is when you're using SSL, it seems like we're doing a round trip for that. Andrew, can you talk to this?
It's only to say that a latency so it sounds like what you're seeing here is that your latency is almost twice as great. It's twice as great as going from the EU to the US and back again, which is surprising. There is a little bit of routing that goes on behind the scenes, but I wouldn't expect to see any hugely appreciable latency increase as a result. So that's an interesting question. I think that's something we'll have to put to the SSL team.
Yeah, I was going to say, that actually sounds more like a bug if that's actually happening. So, yeah, we'll talk to the SSL team about that, because that shouldn't be the case. All right. Sorry, I'm going through this list again in the moderator. Growing popular Go, Mapreduce. Yes, I found it very hard to work my way around the minutely quotas, especially URL fetch minutely quota. My support requests were unresulted. Is it any easier now to get these minutely quotas increased or removed?
So first and foremost, if you can send us your contact information, we can follow up on that. So email address plus app ID would be fantastic. if you're a Premier customer, it's there. You can go through the enterprise support portal to get these bumped up as well.
I believe this is Khan who's asking about also getting set up as a Premier account.
Yes. So in that case, then we, if you can, send us your email address and your app ID or app IDs. We'll follow up first on that, and second of all on where the requests are going to bump these. I assume if you can mention where you submitted the request. I'm assuming it's from the quota bump page that's live on developers.google.com/appengine. But if it was somewhere else, please let us know, and we'll see where those requests are going and make sure that they're funneling into the correct queues so that we can handle them.
Next question. It's funny. I see Khan typing. I like the asynchronous communication.
And we just had someone else doing it. I may have scared off by asking if you wanted to introduce himself. He's left already.
Yeah. Introductions can be frightening. So I think there's one more question here. And again, please continue to add questions in. What are the tools supported to integrate business intelligence into our apps? I read that tools like Jasper Reports or BERT are not supported on App Engine. What are the alternatives to generate reports and export them into different formats, PDF, etc.? Tools like Jasper Reports or BERT are not supported on App Engine. I was like, wow, that guy sounds just like me. It was me. In terms of BI, well, so unless anyone else wants to take it, I can take it.
Go for it.
Why don't I start and you can chime in? So there's a couple of options. One thing I actually encourage you to, so it kind of depends on what exactly you're looking to do. If you're looking to have, and it sounds like you're looking to have like PDF reports, that sort of thing. One of the things that some people do is Mapreduce. Mapreduce is a great way to extract large amounts of information and put it into kind of a concise format. The other thing is that you could do is, we talked earlier about moving data store data into Cloud SQL. One of the things you can do with a Mapreduce, and this is actually a very useful thing to do, is rather than using Cloud SQL necessarily to serve all your data, you can do daily Mapreduces to extract and consolidate the information you want into Cloud SQL. So then Cloud SQL is essentially a database that is just a SQL database that you're doing queries against to get the sort of ad hoc information that you want. There's also a product called Bigquery, which allows you to essentially do ad hoc queries on much larger databases or much larger sets of information. And again, you can do Mapreduces to take your data stored data and move it into Bigquery. And so I think between sort of Mapreduce, Cloud SQL, and Bigquery, those are sort of the three best mechanisms to do analytics. Now, in terms of then turning that into a PDF report, that, I don't think we have, excuse me? Oh, that's true. There's Python image library. So yeah, you can generate it yourself if you want to and turn it into a PDF.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. But to take one of your thoughts and go a little bit further, so we have had a lot of success with companies, gaming companies, and just general like Fortune 500 companies, doing what Greg mentioned, which was a Mapreduce into Cloud SQL, but more importantly, a Mapreduce into BigQuery. In fact, we have some blog posts talking about that. We've got a trusted tester program where we're actually using data store backups to import into BigQuery. So those are ways to get your data into BigQuery, and from there's a very easy SQL-like mechanism or language you can use to query your data. But what I was going to add is that there are third parties out there, there are tools vendors that have actually integrated with BigQuery to give you that kind of visualization. Great. And so really slick-looking dashboards, the things you would expect to have doing BI, as well as the ability to do report generation, exporting, and things like that.
And if you really love App Engine, you can build an App Engine app to present and display this sort of information yourself as well. But yeah, that's a great point. The tools vendor out there that work with BigQuery can help you sort of present information. One of the things we really want you to be able to do is to do sort of fast ad hoc queries. A lot of BI classically has been running reports that take, X number of minutes, hours, or days to run to give you information. And I think one of the things we're really pushing for Bigquery is to be able to not have to have these sort of static reports that take a long time to run, and then you end up having them. And then so you run them daily or that sort of thing, but really being able to do the type of ad hoc analysis that you need to in order to understand what's going on in your business.
Yeah. And you should be able to find those technologies at cloud.google.com/partners, I believe, is where I looked last night. So yeah, have a look there, and then I'm sure on BigQuery's main page they link to it somewhere. So.
And also the Google developers. Google Plus page has lots of information.
So Amy was saying the Google developers Google Plus page is a great source of information.
Sorry,
the cloud page on G Plus.
Developers Plus page. Yes.
That's a mouthful.
Yes.
All right. Let's see. I don't think any new questions have come in. Oh, is there one online?
Yes.
Excellent.
Sebastian has joined us. He had some of the questions. And,
Sebastian.
Yeah, they probably.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey.
Please introduce
Hello.
yourself. Yes.
I'm Sebastian. I'm from Argentina. I run a small development company called DevStar, like Developers Argentina, and we do a lot of App Engine. We have I have in my dashboard 44 apps. So I had to. That could be improved a little. The ones that have W in the name take some time to get to them. Okay, so I made two questions. One was about the Mapreduce. The issue I think I'm having is that I'm using the Mapreduce library to copy data from a large database in data store to Bigquery to do analytics for the marketing team of one of the clients we have. And it's taking more than 1 hour launching more than 100 shards. So I cannot launch more shards to make it shorter. And what I think is happening is that the access token that gets the library to talk with the cloud storage gets invalidated in 1 hour. So I guess it's something around that thing. And the other question I made was about new relegation, which I love for when I'm using Amazon. And I talked with one of the guys that wrote the agent, and I think he told me that he tried to make it work on the App Engine, and the issue was that he wasn't able to launch a background thread to contact New Relic. So I don't know if someone has tried it after the Python 2.7 was released, and if anybody was able to run this background thread to contact New Relic after the request has been completed.
Well, so I guess, Christine, do you want to take the Mapreduce?
So for the Mapreduce one, I actually suspect that you're correct, that your token is being invalidated after 50 minutes, and is then, you can't actually access Google Cloud Storage. It would be really helpful if you could send us your app ID,
Okay.
and we can take a look and see if there are a couple of things that we can do. We're looking at adding some functionality both to Files API and to Mapreduce in terms of improving the shuffler, and seeing if either of those would potentially just solve the problem immediately in the meantime. But I think that's probably the best way for us to proceed. I don't think we can do much more without more technical detail.
Yeah, but yeah, send us your app ID and we'll look into it specifically to debug that problem for you, because it probably means other people are doing exactly the same thing. And then in terms of, oh, you're welcome. And then in terms of New Relic, yeah. So Andrew mentioned this earlier. I think there's probably there's probably two problems. One is being able to, because I do believe New Relic uses sockets and or uses a non-HTTP protocol, I should say. No, it probably doesn't, but it probably does have to connect to the new Relic server, and so yeah, I think you would have to do that with the new Sockets API. And then the other aspect is just, as you mentioned, sort of being able to spawn off a new thread to run in the background to do that. So I don't know New Relic well enough to know, but my suspicion is that could be a challenge as well.
It might be something you could. It might be something you could do with backends. Again, it would be something that you'd think you'd have to. We'd have to look into and you'd have to try out. But certainly, you'd want somewhere where you've got a stable, running process that can talk sockets.
Sebastian, did you mention that you had been in contact with one of the team members?
Yeah.
Actually, Sebastian's put his answer in the.
Oh, great.
In the question. Sorry, his app ID in the question.
Oh, fantastic! So, have you been in contact with one of the New Relic team members or one of the App Engine team members?
No,
New Relic.
Okay.
So I think if they tried it out, you can close the loop between us and them, and we'd talk to them about it too to see if we can get it working with them. So if you want to, someone here, I know someone in our team has talked to New Relic before, but even so, let's connect up and we can see if we can get it working.
Yeah, no, I've talked to him several times on the Java side, and then so I don't claim to know what's going on the Python side, but yeah, we have talked to them. We think they have some fantastic technology.
Yeah.
The Java side has its own set of problems in terms of like class rewriting, bytecode rewriting, some invasive stuff that we'd love to work around, but. Yeah, so let's try to we can try to close the loop either between your contacts or our contacts, kind of figure what's going on.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for using it using App Engine in Argentina. I don't see any other questions on the moderator.
Do we just start asking each other random questions about App Engine? I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, look, he's got his.
Yeah, plushie.
That's fantastic.
I think I got to go down and visit Argentina. I think that's what it seems like. Is we all need to make a trip down to Argentina. Yeah.
You're really welcome.
Excellent.
I got this one from IK.
Sorry, say it again.
I got this one from IK. I think is his name.
Oh, Ikai. Yeah.
Ikai. Sorry.
Okay. Why don't you ask if anyone watching wants to jump in for a last minute live question?
And if anyone wants to jump in for a last minute live question, let me know. And did I see Khan asking a question of where did he get the plushie? Yeah. We might be able to hook Khan up with a plushie. I think we could. I think contact Amy with your info, and we'll see what we can do.
She's not going to get like 10,000 requests.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if other people joined the Hangout, then they too could have. Yeah, exactly.
Use the coupon code.
So unless there's any more live questions that people wanted to ask, and I don't see anything else on the moderator, I think we'll call that. We'll say our Hangout has been hung out.
Has been hung out. Yes, it was quite pleasant. This is great.
Yeah. Thank you very much. It's because the product management team is split between Sydney and San Francisco. We don't all get to see each other all the time. So it's always great when we're together in one room and can chat.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Fantastic, guys.
See you guys. Thanks.
Thank you. See you.